Yeah, g'day YouTubers, Tinker O'Toole again with another video. Today we're going to talk about what gives a better finish on a chain, the inside of a chain, the old file or the grinder. Which one? So first of all, if we just talk about files, they've been around forever. Most of the files, all the files that I use, are either Stihl or Velobe. So yeah, they're Swiss files, and they all look the same, Oregon files. So they all leave a little bit of a rough finish, especially a new file, because it grips and bites in a lot more on the inside of the tooth. So it's certainly not the smoothest finish. So certainly you can end up with a bit of a rough finish. And if we have a look at this picture up here, this was the best picture I could get, where you can see the file marks. I think they're pretty easy to see. It's actually quite hard to get a good photo of that, but you can see those grooves in there left by a file. And a new file tends to, if you back off on the strokes a little bit, the last couple of strokes, you can maybe smooth a few of those out. So your filing technique can improve a little bit and leave a slightly better finish. But certainly files do leave a lot of grooves. It doesn't matter, it's not just on chainsaw, any metal file that you use, on whether it's aluminium or steel, whatever it is, they're all going to leave those little grooves and marks. It's just the nature of a file. So then you go to a grinder, and if we have a look at this picture now, this picture here shows what the grinder looks like. Now that grinding wheel is 80 grit, and we just ground a tooth on that. And we'll just sort of do that a little bit, and maybe you can have a look at that. You want to go nice and slow when you are grinding. Don't go too fast. Now, you may not be able to see this, but the picture showed a lot. But this is definitely a beautiful finish. We'll just see whether you can zoom in. It's very difficult sometimes to see it. We may be lucky today. There it is there. That's actually not too bad. That's my Hexa profiled wheel. Just get those little burrs off. There's always little burrs whether you use a file or a grinder. Not a bad finish. Very nice sharp edges. You can feel those edges. They are sharp. So I think you'll agree that that's not a bad finish. And if we actually have a look at this photo again, this is the one used by the file. I think you can definitely see that there's more grooves in there. Now, that is a cheap wheel. It's only 80 grit. You can get higher quality wheels than that, which will even leave a better finish. Now, if you were to look under a magnifying glass, a very powerful one like a jeweler's doublet, that's what we refer to as a doublet, a jeweler's doublet. It's reasonably powerful. You'll find out that when you look at the edges of the tooth, the top plate and the side plate, you can definitely see all those little ridges on the ends, and whereas the wheel gives a better finish. How much difference does that actually make to the cutting performance? Not as much as you would think. Everything that you do with chainsaws, the correct angle, semi-chisel, full chisel, hexa, all these little things add up and they improve cutting performance. So it may only be 5%. Are you going to detect 5%? Most likely not. But if you can do a better finish on the edges of the tooth, the side plate and the top plate, and it's a razor sharp edge, it's going to cut better, even though it might be a small amount. Okay, to briefly recap, if you want a better finish with a file, let's just say you're doing about 4 passes on the file to sharpen each tooth. On the 5th and the 6th, so back off the pressure and just put very light pressure on it, and you'll find out that it may smooth out some of those ridges there. Depends on the hardness of the metal, depends on the condition of the file. But generally speaking, if you back off the pressure the last couple of strokes, you generally get a better surface finish. So the harder you push the file in there, the more aggressive it will be on the metal. So, and this goes exactly the same for the grinder. If you're going to pull this grinder down really quick and just go into the tooth, it's going to blue the metal. It's going to be a rough as guts finish. You're going to have burrs like you don't believe all over the place. So exactly the same principle applies that you go, well, the same principle applies on the last couple of passes of the grinding wheel. So let's just say you go 1, 2, 3, 4. On the last 2, just bring it down very, very light and barely bring it down so that it's just barely touching. You can always put a bit of lateral force so that it just barely touches the last 2, and then you'll find out that'll even give a smoother finish. It's a bit like having a bit of sandpaper. If you've got a bit of sandpaper and you really put a lot of force and pressure on, the particle size on the sandpaper will scratch deeper into the timber. If you only put slight pressure on it, they won't go as deep and you'll get a better finish. So the same principle applies to a grinding wheel and to a file. The last couple of strokes, back off. Just back off, put half the amount of force and pressure on there, you'll end up with a better finish. If you really want the ultimate finish, and it's very difficult to find them, is a 100 grit wheel. But having said that, use a CBN wheel and you'll even get a better finish again. A CBN wheel on a grinder, the finish is unbelievable. No file will come anywhere close to what a CBN wheel can do. They work that good. So as far as who's going to win the race, to me, a grinder will always win the race. Every single time, provided the operator is very good. Now, if you get an extremely good operator on a file, like someone like Buck and Billy Ray, and they're 1 in a million, that guy can file a chain better than anyone that I've ever seen on YouTube. Most of it can't file as good as him. I'm only an average filer. I can file a chain and it cuts really good, but I'm not an exceptional filer. And most people are just average. For those people that are an exceptional filer, I can understand why they'll use a file and not a grinder. That's okay if they're only doing a few chains. But if you're someone like me that's using chainsaws all the time, then this starts to become a chore, using the file on a regular basis, and it's more time consuming. I can whip through a chain much quicker using that grinder than I can using a hand file, and it'll be much more precision. That I can guarantee. You can take that to the bank. That's my take on it. Others will swear by the file. That's okay. Maybe you're an exceptional filer. I'm an exceptional grinder. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.